Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Ambassador Cohen, honored guests. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matthew Holmes, and I serve as the Senior Vice President, Policy and Government Relations with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I would like to begin today's event by recognizing that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, who have lived on and cared for these lands for millennia. And I know we have a number of guests here with us today, and I'd encourage you to take in where the two rivers come together, the Rideau and the Ottawa, as they're now called. These two rivers provide four directions, and they have traditionally been a gathering place for communities to come together, to share and exchange, and to plan the future, which is part of what we're doing here today as well, in honor of that tradition. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who have gathered with us here today, and to those joining online as well, for our first Executive Summit of the year, our Executive Summit on Critical Minerals. So it's an exciting moment for the team at the Canadian Chamber. We have a whole series of these planned for the rest of the year, so I encourage you to go back and see the other ones that we have coming up, but we're so excited to have such a full room here today. And it's just great. And I think a moment to acknowledge and thank the team at the Canadian Chamber who have put a tremendous amount of work into this. Thank you to all of you. These events are designed to provide a unique opportunity to exchange ideas, share insights, and build partnerships in support of a strong economy and a better life Canadians and our international partners can enjoy. I would like to thank our title sponsor for this event, Vital Metals, as well a big thank you to our presenting sponsor, E3 Lithium. To get us started, I would like to turn it over to John Dorward, the CEO and Managing Director of Vital Metals. Thank you so much. John.
Good afternoon to everyone participating here today, and especially those who are joining us virtually. And welcome to the historic confines of the Rideau Club here in Ottawa. On behalf of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Vital Metals Limited, I am pleased to introduce our keynote speaker and guest of honour, His Excellency David L. Cohen, the Ambassador for the United States to Canada. Since he arrived in Canada, Ambassador Cohen has worked tirelessly to implement the goals of the Canada-US Joint Action Plan on Critical Minerals Collaboration. This strategic plan and other initiatives aim to advance bilateral efforts to secure supply chains for the critical minerals needed for the strategic interests of both Canada and the United States. Among his many achievements include the inclusion of incentives for Canadian electric vehicles and critical minerals in the Inflation Reduction Act, the expanded application of the Defence Production Act Title III funding to include Canadian critical minerals projects, and the forthcoming visit of President Biden to Canada, which we anticipate will include significant discussions on developing and deepening and securing North American supply chains of critical minerals. Before his appointment by President Biden and the unanimous confirmation by the US Senate as US Ambassador to Canada, Ambassador David L. Cohen served in senior positions with Comcast Corporation, and was a partner and chairman of Ballard, Spar, Andrews and Ingersoll LLP, one of the 100 largest law firms in the US. From 92 to 1997, Ambassador Cohen served as Chief of Staff of the Mayor of the City of Philadelphia. A native of New York and growing up in New Jersey, Ambassador Cohen graduated with a BA from Swarthmore College in 1977 and with a JD from the University of Pennsylvania Law School, summa cum laude, in 1981. Before his appointment in Ottawa, he lived in Philadelphia with his wife. Like the other founding members of the Critical Minerals Council, our goal is to build secure and socially responsible critical mineral supply chains amongst our friends and allies, and none more so than with the United States, with whom Canada's industrial, environmental, social, and national security interests are so deeply intertwined. I can share with you that Vital has received intense interest from US industry for the rare earth products from our planned Tardif expansion in the Northwest Territories at Nechalacho. I have just come from a conference down in Florida, and the meetings with a number of meetings with substantial potential offtake counterparties who are very interested in looking at the products that we plan to mine from Tardif. Mr. Ambassador, I would be remiss if I did not express the Critical Minerals Council's and Vital Metals' deep appreciation to your dedicated, insightful, and hardworking team at the Embassy, and to the US Consulate in Calgary, who are helping us understand and navigate the range of US programming available to the Canadian critical minerals industry. I particularly want to thank your staff for participating in the unveiling of Vital Metals' rare earth processing facility in Saskatoon last year. Together with our Indigenous stakeholders, we look forward to hosting members of your team and representatives of the US government at our Nechalacho Rare Earths project on Chief Dry Geese Territory in the Northwest Territories. As my staff has shared with your team, the summer is probably the preferable time to be there. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador David Cohen to today's Critical Minerals Executive Seminar.
I thought John was pretty tall. I didn't realize I have to go and raise the microphone for that as well. But thanks, John, for that introduction. And Matthew, thanks very much for the invitation to be here today. And please extend my greetings to Perrin. I think this is my fourth appearance with this organization. He's been at the other three, so he gets a hall pass for missing this program today. I know a lot of you are getting ready to go to PDAC in Toronto for the annual conference. And although an elegant historic room can be no competition for the vibrancy of a trade show, I hope we're able to keep you at least somewhat entertained during the course of the program today. So I've been the United States Ambassador to Canada for all of 15 months now. One of the things I think that means that I can't say I'm the new United States Ambassador to Canada anymore. But I'm very proud of what the United States and Canada have been able to accomplish together over that period of time. We've worked together to fight COVID-19 and reopen our borders. We've begun the process of building back better from the pandemic and have done that in an equitable fashion, rebuilding our economies from the bottom up and from the middle out, as President Biden likes to say. We've stood together with the people of Ukraine in the face of Russia's unprovoked and illegal aggression, and we've rebuilt some of the trust that has been lost between Canada and the United States over the preceding 5 years. Now, of course, I can't take credit for any of this. That honor goes to Prime Minister Trudeau and to President Biden. And by the way, I know the president is very much looking forward to his visit to Canada later this month. I can finally say it's going to be this month, as opposed to next month or in a couple months or in March. Our two countries still have a lot of work to do, but the progress we've made in such a short time is one reason I'm so proud to be here, to be the United States Ambassador to Canada, and President Biden's representative to Canada is truly the honor of a lifetime. So this afternoon, rather than give a usual commentary about the strength of the bilateral relationship, the volume of our trade, thought I'd focus on two particular issues: climate change and energy security, where the United States and Canada are working together, and what it means for our future. It's the ultimate example, I think, of the strength of our bilateral relationship. As you all know, critical minerals really stand at the nexus of those two issues. That's why they're so important, not just to Canada and the United States, but also for other countries around the world. So when I talk about climate change, when I talk about energy sufficiency, when I talk about the energy transition, energy security, it is by nature a fertile ground to also talk about critical minerals. I'm proud to say that our two countries have really stepped up when it comes to fighting climate change. Under the Biden-Harris administration, the United States has set ambitious targets to cut U.S. emissions by 50 to 52% below 2005 levels by 2030, to reach 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, and to achieve a net zero emissions economy by 2050. Canada has set equally aggressive, equally ambitious climate change goals. As President Biden said in his State of the Union address last month, climate change is an existential threat, and we have an obligation not to ourselves, but to our children and grandchildren to confront it, and our two leaders are doing precisely that. To achieve these ambitious emission reduction targets, however, we need to accelerate our transition to clean energy. And to do that, we need critical minerals. It's really as simple as that. A very simple equation that I hope puts critical minerals in front of the American public, the Canadian public, and elected officials in both of our countries. The International Energy Agency recently predicted that demand for most minerals essential to the clean energy transition will increase 4 to 6-fold over the next decade and a half. For some minerals, the increase is going to be exponential, far beyond 4 to 6 times. For example, by 2040, graphite demand is projected to increase 25 times and lithium by 42 times. Everyone in this room knows we have a problem. Simply put, we don't have enough critical minerals available today to power the world's clean energy agenda. And our current supply chains for those minerals, from extraction to production to recycling, are simply not diverse enough for the clean energy future that's coming. I don't need to remind you of what happens when the supply chain breaks down, or when we depend on a single supplier on the other side of the globe, single supplier that may not be so friendly to us. We lived that during the pandemic, and we can't let it happen again. This problem is also not just about supply chains. It's about energy security. Second topic I said I wanted to reference. I know this is no secret to any of you, but today, China controls the critical mineral supply chain at every step in the supply chain. This is particularly true when it comes to refining of critical minerals. According to a 2022 Brookings Institution report, Canada refines 68% of nickel globally, 40% of copper, 58% of lithium, and 73% of cobalt. China accounts for most global production of mineral-rich components for battery cells, including 70% of cathodes, which are the most important component in batteries and can account for half the cost of a manufactured cell, and for the majority of production of anodes, separators, and electrolytes. Most significantly, China holds 78% of the world's cell manufacturing capacity for electric vehicle batteries, which are then assembled into modules that are used to form a battery pack. It is also home to 3/4 of the world's lithium-ion battery mega factories. In other words, the status quo will not provide the energy security that Canada, the United States, and our democratic friends and allies around the world are predicting and projecting and advocating is an essential part of our energy future. I hope everyone didn't get depressed there, because there is good news, and that is that we've finally woken up to the problem. In order to solve a problem, you have to recognize that it exists. And I think we have recognized that this problem exists, and we're now working on putting ideas into action like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, or the Critical Minerals Strategy in Canada. And we need to help each other to make this possible, to drive demand for EVs, to help fund critical mineral extraction, and to move manufacturing, refining, and mining back to North America in a responsible way. And our two countries are investing billions to make that happen. For the United States, the Inflation Reduction Act is the cornerstone of our effort to combat climate change and shift our economy toward clean energy, and to do that with a North America focus. It's the biggest investment in U.S. history to curb emissions, promote clean energy technologies, advance environmental justice, and bolster climate adaptation efforts. It presents huge opportunities for the United States and for Canada to open new avenues for trade and manufacturing in clean energy, and to strengthen regional supply chains, which are the lifeblood of our economies. What I note in observing this is that the governments, Canada, United States, European countries, we're not going to solve the critical minerals challenges and needs that we have as governments. The private sector is going to drive those solutions. And the role of government is to figure out how to incent the private sector to participate wholly and enthusiastically, and how to clear the way for that private sector engagement. What is really exciting to me is that government seems to have figured that out, and the private sector is responding in impressive ways. General Motors has announced a plan to become carbon neutral in its global products and operations by 2040, and to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty vehicles by 2035. Ford is investing $22 billion in electrification through 2025. This, by the way, reminds me of talking about the president's visit, because I've talked about these issues for years, and 2025 sounded like it was a long way off when I first started talking about it. It's 2 years from now. We are rapidly getting to the point where we will see the benefit of these commitments. These investments are helping to lead a transition in the way we work to meet our climate commitments overall, and they also create new opportunities for manufacturing in the United States and Canada with good paying union jobs. They're also driving increasing investment upstream in processing and mining, and downstream in recycling. This is the very definition of building back better. We're not just building back our economy, we're doing it in a way that's better than the way in which it used to exist. So just last week, for example, North Carolina's Piedmont Lithium announced an agreement with LG for Canadian lithium from Quebec to supply its North American supply chains, creating new good jobs on both sides of the border. I get tired of hearing about whether the Inflation Reduction Act is competitive with Canada, and whether potential programs to be announced in this year's budget is a competitive response by Canada to the United States. We are in this together. We need to build this economy. We need to build this capacity together. Yes, we're competing, but we're not competing with each other. We're competing against the world's autocracies. And by working together, we will create a formidable competitive force. Now, and by the way, I have to say, we're not talking about small investments and small incentives. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars invested on both sides of the border, creating good jobs for Canadians and Americans, getting us closer to achieving our climate ambitions, and strengthening our energy security. We can't stop where we are, though. We must do more at every stage of the critical minerals value chain. For example, we have to look for ways to support recycling of electronic scrap and waste, and we must do it sustainably. If we succeed, recycling will reduce demand. By 2040, 10% of electric vehicle battery minerals could come from recycled copper, lithium, nickel, and cobalt. And with EVs expected to command half the global market by 2030, that is a significant amount. So when Secretary of State Blinken visited Canada last October, we had a chance to go together to see Lithium's recycling facility in Montreal, which is just one example of an innovative technology in Canada that exists through partnership with the United States. Both GM and the government are significant investors in Lithium. The batteries that are providing the base material for the recycling are coming from GM, mostly from the United States. And the lithium that is produced through that recycling process will be put back into batteries and battery components that will be used to assemble cars in Canada and the United States. So my favorite part of that visit, after I saw this demonstration, sort of shakes your head. You forget that lithium is a mineral. It doesn't ever go away. It can run down, but it is rechargeable in perpetuity. And so at Lithium, they get 95% of the lithium under discharged batteries. They regenerate the lithium, they put them into batteries, and then they resell the batteries, or the batteries can be resold. So I'm just standing there, and it occurred to me, where is this lithium coming from that is being recycled? So I said to the CEO, I said, where does this lithium come from? Where do these batteries come? We're standing in a room full of batteries. A room may not have been as long as this, but at a higher ceiling. And it's like full of dirty batteries. So he waved at one of the workers and said, bring the ambassador one of those batteries. He just went to this pile, and he picked up a battery, brought it over. I controlled myself and didn't grab it myself. It was filthy. And the CEO said, turn it over. And the CEO went and wiped the bottom of the battery with his finger. And what did it say? Made in China. And so I looked at the CEO, I said, wait a minute. So what you're telling me is that in this plant, we are recycling Chinese lithium and we are making it Canadian lithium. He said, that's exactly right. So we don't have to go into the ground to be able to take on China with a recycling technology like we saw. So these are all positive steps and reasons to be hopeful, but we can't rest on our laurels. We need to continue to move, and to move quickly. Vladimir Putin's illegal war of choice in Ukraine has demonstrated the need to speed up the clean energy transition, not just for the environment, but for reasons of energy security, which is the third topic I said I wanted to reference today. But as everyone in this room knows, there's an economic and business opportunity here, as well as an energy security and environmental opportunity. I was speaking with one executive from an auto manufacturing company recently, and he emphasized that governments need to focus on moving quickly, particularly in Canada. He described this as a global race going on with projects happening around the world. He made no reference to competition between the United States and Canada. He was looking at this as a North American opportunity. And he said Canada's in the pole position here in the critical minerals race, but it's still a race. And the United States is a partner in this race, not your competitor. This came from an auto industry CEO. In fact, we have to work together in this race to the top to meet our climate goals and energy security needs quickly and responsibly at the same time. We have to do the right thing for our economy today and for our children and grandchildren tomorrow. And by acting together and with responsibility, we can set a compelling example for other countries to increase their climate ambitions. So we have a big challenge in front of us, but I'm confident that the United States and Canada can get to the finish line together and to do that responsibly. So I've known Joe Biden for 3 decades. One of my favorite things he has said about the U.S. relationship with Canada came from a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau over 2 years ago. He said, there's nothing we cannot achieve when we commit ourselves to, we being Canada and the United States. And when we work together as the closest of friends should, we only make each other stronger. That's how I feel about the U.S.-Canada relationship. That's how I feel about the current status of that relationship. It's about our friendship, about our partnership, about our shared values. And we are stronger today, precisely because we're working together, and we're going to be even stronger tomorrow as that partnership continues, with critical minerals playing a leading role in the collaboration that we will have together. So I look forward to being able to come back here and report on our successes and be able to demonstrate just how close this relationship has grown and the overall benefit to both of our countries, both of our economies, to democracies around the world, and in achieving climate change, energy security, and a stronger and better economy. So thanks very much, and I look forward to our questions. Yep. On my side, you have to guide it.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think there was a lot to unpack from that speech on many of the very important areas that both Canada and the US share. And just because I speak a little funny, I might throw Australia in to that mix as well. We don't want to be left out of the Three Musketeers. So in 2020, the Canada-US Joint Action Plan on Critical Minerals Collaboration was finalised. This is a strategic plan aiming to advance bilateral interest in securing supply chains for the critical minerals needed for strategic manufacturing sectors, including electric vehicles, renewable energy, communication technology, aerospace and defence, as well as clean technology. The Joint Action Plan is now 3 years old. What has the Joint Action Plan's success been to date, and what do you see as near-term opportunities for additional achievements on this important file?
So I think the Joint Action Plan, as many documents like this often do, has served as a call to action, has served as an alert, and has provided a vehicle for Canada and the United States to get together, to collaborate, and to reinforce the opportunities that we have to work together. So flowing out of the Joint Action Plan, by way of example, came the Critical Minerals Partnership, which was announced at last year's PDAC conference, which is a more collective between Canada, the United States, and several other like-minded countries to advance extraction, production, and supply chain stability in the critical mineral space. The Joint Action Plan calls for that type of behavior. It required the two countries to convene, and I think we're beginning to see the fruit now of those collaborative relationships that were identified as potentials in the Joint Action Plan. One of the things that is so clear to me is that in this space, and in many spaces, but in this space, time moves unbelievably quickly. And if you don't act within the windows that are available, you can be passed by. On the other hand, if you do act, you can cement your position and cement a position as being at the forefront of the construction and the utilization of the critical minerals supply chain.
Thank you. President Biden recently invoked the 1950 Defense Production Act to expand the domestic mining industry. It has been reported that the US military is reviewing funding mining projects in Canada amid rivalry with China. Canadian projects, and mining projects in particular, have had limited success applying for DPA funding. Can you speak towards the reasons for this lack of success and provide guidance on how Canadian mining companies can be more successful in their Defence Production Act Title III funding applications?
So I get asked the question before my service in Canada, talking about private sector procurement and public sector procurement, that there are all these opportunities, but my company's not been able to successfully compete. Or speaking to a Chamber of Commerce, we have not been able to compete. And so when I hear this concern, I say two things, which is procurement is not about guaranteed results. It's about opportunity. And the solution to a problem, if you have not been successful to date, is to keep trying. In most procurements, and under the Defense Production Act, historically, this is true, you can get feedback as to why your proposal was not funded. And then the next time around, hopefully you can adjust to take advantage of that opportunity. So that is a generic answer about how to compete in government procurement, which I think is absolutely applicable here. Even more importantly is that when President Biden announced his intention to use the Defense Production Act as part of the battle against climate change to accelerate the climate transition, and was very explicit about wanting to make Defense Production Act funding available to like-minded countries, including Canada, it has opened a door where there is more engagement with Canada, not less, more opportunities for Canada, not less, more opportunities for partnership with Canada, not less. And I think you'll find there'll be easier guidance about how to navigate the complexities of not only government procurement, but defense procurement, which is a separate animal in and of itself. So I'm optimistic about the Defense Production Act as a source for funding for American and Canadian companies to be able to finance and accelerate the climate transition, the energy transition, climate change, and energy security, those three elements that I talked about in my remarks.
David, I hope you wrote down that note on perseverance being required. China currently dominates the supply chains for many critical minerals. China leads global rare earth mining and separation, processing of aluminium refining and smelting, lithium and cobalt refining, and graphite production, to name a few, and the list goes on. Obviously, we want to maintain working relations with China. Nevertheless, I'm hoping that you can speak to the importance of developing domestic extraction and processing capacity within North America, both from a security and economic standpoint.
So, John, I'm happy you phrased that question the way you did, because as justifiably skeptical as I hope we all are about China and China's motivation, as justifiably concerned as we might be, as we should be, about the methods that China uses to compete, the non-rules-based underpinnings of Chinese trade strategy, we just cannot afford to cut China off and to build a wall between China and the West. So our future has to involve figuring out a way to be able to work with China too in this space. But by the same token, we would be foolish if we did not develop our own capacity. And that's what I spent a bit of time talking about in my remarks, which is we have to develop that capacity. We have to create an alternative for critical minerals, both extracting them from the ground and processing them, refining them, and then processing them into components, fueling the energy transition that puts us in a position to be competitive with China. One element of competition is to be a supplier of critical minerals and critical minerals components that respects ESG standards. You can compete on that basis. There are people who are concerned about buying out of the supply chain when you're supporting labor that's making 25 cents an hour. We're not going to pay our workers 25 cents an hour, but we can make that a competitive advantage, not just a competitive disadvantage. And so I describe the game we're engaged in this space of competing against China as a race to the top instead of a race to the bottom. We can distinguish ourselves for the quality of our goods and services and minerals, and the quality of our processes that are leading to those minerals being extracted from the ground and processed into usable goods in connection with the energy transition. And we have to be upfront about that. We have to be brave about it. We have to fight really hard to talk about the importance of goods and services that are produced pursuant to a rules-based economy. And I do think we'll be able to compete against China on that basis.
Thank you. I think your point about a race to the top is an excellent one. It doesn't need to be a zero-sum game or a winner-take-all approach.
Exactly. This is a place, there is a lot there for everyone. I mean, we don't need to have 90% of the market. There's a growing market, and we need to start with a toehold and then grow that toehold. And again, I intentionally use that expression. I think a race to the top is a better way to compete than a race to the bottom.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I understand that is time for the ambassador. Ambassador Cohen, thank you for your remarks today. John Dorward of Vital Metals, thank you so much for your participation as well. Please join me in thanking
Thank you.
our two guests today.